And you get punitive damages in a car accident lawsuit if the other driver was using their cell phone and got distracted. I'm Kevin Kneupper. I'm an attorney at Kneupper & Covey, and I want to talk to you about this question and how this works because this is something that's happening a lot these days with people driving. I've seen a lot of it driving myself, and what does it do for your case in this increasingly common scenario where someone just rams into you or hits a pedestrian or hits whatever because they were just staring at their phone or texting or ignoring the road? First thing I want to do is give you a disclaimer because as a lawyer, we love giving disclaimers, I guess. And so I am licensed in California and Texas as an attorney, but my law partner is licensed in Georgia, and I'm going to be talking to you about a Georgia legal case today. We handle cases all around the country because we've got partnerships with various law firms that can kind of work as our co-counsel in different states where we may not be licensed. But just as a disclaimer, I am not licensed in Georgia, even though we do have attorneys at our law firm who are licensed there. The reason I want to talk about Georgia is because there's a Court of Appeals decision that came out pretty recently, last October, that talks specifically about this scenario that everyone is seeing all the time, really, of people sitting on their phones and texting or trying to drive while they're talking on the phone or playing on their phone. I've seen a lot of people out here in California just weaving around different lanes, and you'll look over sometimes. There's one I drove over and looked over to the right into their window, and they had two separate cell phones mounted that they were playing with simultaneously as they look kind of like they must have. I thought they were drunk at first, actually, just they were going across all the lanes, and nope, they were playing games on their phones. So you're seeing more and more cases like this, more and more people getting in these scenarios. Everyone's seeing it on the road, and now courts are having to deal with it in more written legal opinions. And usually these kind of car accident or injury cases or whatever don't come up as often to decisions by the Court of Appeals. They don't involve as many legal issues. But this is an interesting one, and the Georgia case, which is McKnight versus Love is the name of it, gave us some details on what a court's going to do in terms of punitive damages. So what happened in this McKnight case? So this was all about could a driver get punitive damages when he'd been rear-ended by a guy who was sitting around on his phone, sort of messing around and didn't pay any attention. And the facts there were that this guy's driving his car, he looks behind his rearview mirror, and he's been in stop-and-go traffic on the I-20 in DeKalb County, Georgia. DeKalb County is actually, if you live there, it's a very plaintiff-friendly jurisdiction. There's a lot of lawsuits that are filed there because people tend to be more sympathetic to plaintiffs in general. And so he's driving on the road. He sees in the rearview mirror that the car's just coming way too fast at one of these points where they're stop, go. Realizes he's going to get rear-ended. He doesn't know what's going on with the driver, but then he does get hit from behind, and now he's in a car accident, has serious injuries from it. How do they know that this guy was using his cell phone? Well, this is something that if you're an attorney, we are having to get very up to date, and people who are not technological start having problems. We're fortunate that my partner and I both were nerds, I guess, when we were younger and still are, and so we know a lot about using the technology to sort of discover things. What they did in this case, this is not our law firm, it's a different firm that brought this up to the Court of Appeals, but they did something that's pretty standard, which is you can go subpoena the phone company and find out, not the details of what they were sending, but you can find the times. And so if you know when the car accident was, you can know, and when the person was driving, you can go, okay, they were sending a text during this time period. You can find that out from the phone as well if they still have the phone available. And you can get information that shows a lot about what someone was doing on their phone. If you're someone who was in a car accident or in some kind of injury where you think a person might have been using their cell phone, you can be very helpful to the lawyer that's ultimately representing you if you do things like take a picture of the accident. First of all, you should be doing that in general, but anytime you take a picture on your phone, you're saving data into your phone about the exact time, the exact location, and that's all in the pictures. You can't see it, but we can go grab that data out. That helps people know, okay, the lawyer now knows when was this accident down to the second. If you immediately started taking photos, then we know, okay, well, that's right when it happened a few minutes later. You can get data onto your phone that is then proof of when was the other person in the accident, which then helps show, okay, 5 minutes before, 2 minutes before, they were sending a text, they were talking to someone, they were on a call. So you can determine this stuff even if you think you can't. We've done some pretty crazy things with phone data, gotten people who the other side was claiming they were in a certain place at one time, and we've been able to show, oh no, they were 2 hours away. They couldn't have been there because they happened to take a photo of something in their friend's house. So you can do a lot with data, and you can often prove that somebody actually was just sitting on their phone and thus caused an accident. So Does this get to punitive damages, though? Because if you're a regular driver, you're probably looking at this, and I'm certainly looking at this going, these people are causing lots of accidents. When you're on your phone, when you're texting, that is getting very bad, and it's leading to a lot of serious problems. Can you punish the person with extra damages if you can prove that? And if you don't know what punitive damages are and have just heard the term, they're kind of extra damages that are designed to punish, to deter people from doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And so in any kind of lawsuit, it doesn't just have to be a car accident. I've seen them in all kinds of cases. They're not always available because the conduct kind of has to go above and beyond. It's not just regular, oh, you had an accident. It's not just regular, you did something to somebody. It's, oh, really needs to kind of have a warning shot so that people know not to do this kind of thing. And the reason punitive damages are good if you're a plaintiff is that they can be like a multiple of what your actual damages are. So if you, let's say the total damage from the car accident, your car, gets totaled, it's worth $5,000. You could multiply that by 3, 4. The conduct has to be pretty severe to make it go higher, and there's kind of limits in the Constitution. So it's not just like infinite money, but you can get a lot more money. And so people always want punitive damages if they're a plaintiff. So that leads to, well, can you get them? What did the Georgia Court of Appeals say about this? Definitely, it's binding in Georgia, but it's stuff other states are going to be looking at too. The Georgia court looked at that state's law, and it can be very different because the thing is, Georgia is one of these states that's had tort reform, so they have put a lot of limits on what people can get sometimes. So it's a more restrictive law than some other states would be. If you're in California, if you're in different states, you might find that it's easier to get punitive damages than it would be in Georgia. But what Georgia set up as the standard for a case involving text messages is there's got to be, and really in general, there have to be one of two things. The first is that you have to be able to show a pattern that the driver has done something, basically like had a pattern of bad driving that justifies the punitive damages. So just one time of texting and driving wouldn't be enough. But if you can show that they're doing that, say, every day going to work, then that might be enough of a pattern. Or the court gives examples of people who have had a series of DUI convictions. It shows that they tend to be reckless when driving. You've been convicted 3 times of DUIs, and now you're texting and driving. Okay, it's time to impose some damages on you, like punitive damages. And so that's one category, one way that you can get to the punitive damages in a texting and driving scenario. And the second category is if it's kind of particularly aggravating circumstances. The court said that in this McKnight case, where the driver had been in stop-and-go traffic and had been texting, that wasn't enough. And if you start thinking about it, you can see why, okay, the court might say, look, that's not on a scale of like 1 to just completely evil or whatever. Like texting and driving in stop-and-go traffic is more likely and probably less dangerous than texting and driving while you're doing 90 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour on a highway or in a school zone or something. There's a lot of ways that could be more dangerous. So the court was really just saying on a sort of scale of like, how bad is this? The fact that it was stop and go instead of just full on traffic, the fact that so it's kind of like you're taking pauses. There might be times when you're texting and you're actually physically stopped in the traffic. Yes, it's bad, but the court said it wasn't enough on that basis with no other pattern of doing things to impose punitive damages on the driver there. What does that mean for drivers, particularly drivers in Georgia? Well, so if you live in Georgia and you've got a car accident case or have been injured with something that was, sometimes it's not you, like it can be like pedestrians, right? So you may not even be in a car. But if you're injured from someone who is texting while they were driving or who's messing around with their phone, you and your attorneys need to be looking into the background of that person, need to be trying to figure out if they can show that the driver has some kind of history that's documented, that's provable. Oftentimes people get sued. There's lots of ways you can find this. You can find it in criminal background checks. You can find one way that's kind of a little more creative is if someone is commuting at a certain time and you can show that they were commuting at a certain time, then you could show, hey, you're sending texts for the last month or whenever you can get the cell phone records, you keep sending them during your commute. And so that might help show the pattern, which would be the first way to get punitive damages. That you always want to try to get them. You may not be able to. If you can't, does that mean your case is over or horrible? Not necessarily. There are a couple things to consider, I guess. One is that the insurance policy may have a limit such that you already get to the full amount of the policy regardless of punitive damages. So depending on if the insurance company writes the check for it versus fighting the case, it may not matter from an amount of money perspective. But you can also, there are other kinds of damages that, such as emotional distress damages are an example. That's a whole category with its own legal issues as to whether you can get them, damages from how much people are injured by things. And so you can get to numbers that are pretty significant regardless of whether punitive damages are at play in the case. You want to help your own lawyer, document at the time something like this happens to you. Even if you don't think you're hurt or you don't know, like, hey, do I want to sue about this or not, or whatever, just take the photos, right? Like, take video, show, like, before anyone's moving their car or whatever. Try to get as much evidence as you can. Get police reports, call the police to have them take down a police report. Do anything that would document who was at fault, what was it cause, or what was the cause of this. And make sure you don't text and drive. Really, in general, you shouldn't be doing this. The amount, just seeing what people are doing on the roads, people need to stop doing this. I know people do it. It's not okay, but people need to stop. And the more you can get in these kind of scenarios, like, I mean, you just need to know that's not good for anybody, regardless of whether you're going to have some lawyer suing you. The consequences can be pretty bad these days.